Hello YouTube. This is John, webmaster at untrained.org, the most user-friendly, comprehensive, and revealing site on the net. We're at 3,333 viewers strong, if you can believe that. And today I'm going to talk about the truth about the Legion of Christ. I'm going to read you a letter because legionaries love letters. Well, love letters, especially those of their founder. But this is a different letter about the founder, in fact. So I'll just begin. To Reverend X, Chancellor with the Diocese of X. Dear Reverend X in Christ, you will doubtless appreciate the daunting task before me, because the Legion of Christ has perfected the art of making those who describe them to appear crazed, similar in many ways to Area 51. Children's author Roald Dahl took up this theme in Matilda, where the principal would take the schoolgirls by their braided hair and throw them over the school wall. The criminal genius at work here is that the Legion's ways are so bizarre that they only make sense within a framework of an incredibly ambitious scheme, and we will touch on their rather apparent master plan in the course of this outline. And that's without even going into the narcissist-dependent dynamic that prevails in organizations headed by the criminally insane. I don't want to dwell too much on this or on the individual psychology, whereby legionaries and ex-legionaries tend to fall fairly neatly into two categories, which I would term the radicalized and the awakened. Because what follows is such a comprehensive overview with well-supported inductions about the Legion's true goals, I do contraindicate this being shared with the radicalized member or ex-member until they have been adequately prepared for it, lest their mind snap somehow. Suffice it to say that the organization's two-faced behavior and their heavy use of lawyers to silence those they've essentially used and left for dead is incomprehensible even to the most jaded bureaucrat, perhaps especially to such ones. Section 1. The Legion currently operates in ex-diocesan jurisdiction. A. It recently came to my surprise that the Congregation of Pontifical Right, called the Legion of Christ, has been active in the Diocese of X. I was a seminarian with the Legion from 999 to 1103. I understand that since then, the congregation is under new management, actually insourced, and is undergoing a kind of reform under a degree of Vatican oversight. But the things I continue to see and hear from its leaders, and the things I do not see from them, provide me with solid reasons to believe in my heart of hearts that the Legion should still be watched very carefully. And these reasons I will specify. B. It is my understanding that Reverend XXLC knows Most Reverend XX in a professional capacity from their respective work in northern New England, and in the wake of Bishop X's installation, Father X has come into the area for the first time I'm aware of. Specifically, I personally saw him in the last week, both at X Church and at X Retreat House, both in the town of X. C. The current X Retreat House director, Reverend XX, is even newer at his post than the current bishop is at his. So my concern was that some things had not been communicated by predecessors, and some details may have fallen through the cracks, particularly given the difference of the two bishops' respective personalities. Read Philosophies. What follows, God willing, should cover the main points that would have been helpful. D. The Diocese of X is clearly at a crossroads vis-a-vis vocations and education and parishioner retention. I am edified to see His Excellency welcoming religious orders into the area. E. The Legion's late criminally insane founder and premier Catholic priest, Maciel, was allegedly discovered only at the end of his life to have been living three totally separate, fatherly lives, one as a priest and self-styled spiritual authority, and two as a provider for two different families, one in his native Mexico and one in Europe. Footnote: Maciel told one of his simultaneous girlfriends that he was an agent of the CIA. He sexually molested offspring whom he had with them. F. Pope Benedict XVI, during his papacy, denounced Maciel, the most famous priest in the world to date, as having led a life, quote, without scruples and devoid of authentic religious sentiment, end quote. Parenthesis. This reminds me of words Reverend Antonio Balleres used with my classmate Elias Fojas in Spiritual Direction, wherein he told him that the Divine Mercy Chaplet of the newly canonized Saint Faustina was a womanly, meaning unmanly, devotion. End parenthesis. Moreover, Maciel's followers have, in all my experience, shown every sign of being serious about imitating his example, which was a hallmark of their indoctrination, or spirituality, with Maciel being lauded as essentially an updated embodiment of our Lord's witness. This will set the stage for all that follows. G. Sorry about that. Section 2. The Legion still poisons morals. A. I was a legionary for a little over 4 years, and I have spent many more years researching historical data and cross-examining fellow expulsees, with an eye to regaining sound perspective and becoming a more effective servant of the people of God. Now, in the ethics of such luminaries as Pope Blessed John Paul II, Saint is it? Footnote: the Legionaries ironically could not find enough words or enough songs, even, of praise for Blessed John Paul II, which in hindsight amounts to a study in diligent duplicity. In the ethics of John Paul II, however, the end never justifies the means. People are never a means, but always an end. And priests are to be the example, the paragon, not the exception, nor granted dispensation from these baseline principles. But legionaries, by contrast, are told to prioritize the results, or frutos, of their formation and apostolate, rather than just means or motives. In other words, righteous means or motives, with strict adherence to orders given by superiors named by Maciel, and methodology written by Maciel, all executed under absurdly strict timetables. They adopt a hustle mindset, in both senses of the word hustle. See the testimony of the founders of the apostolate Familia. They know what I'm talking about. Legionaries love inequality, mock scruples, and see people as tools, not ends. They're means to an end for them. In fact, when I was a novice and the Legion sent me to an orthodontist, my assistant, that's under the director of novices, made it quite clear that they were doing this for the Legion, not for me. B. Pope John Paul II often said, quote, "Be not afraid," end quote. But as a legionary, I can remember being unable to shake this visceral fear that the Legion's formators instill in members, over a great peril to my soul, if I were to ever leave the congregation of my own private discernment. That is why, for me, this is not about ecclesiopolitics, but basic ethics, and specifically honesty. Neither was I in this matter an isolated exception. I've talked to many ex-members. All of them were scared blankless of leaving of their own volition. And to make matters worse, at one time, an upperclassman in Sao Paulo sort of randomly asked me if I would be willing to infiltrate another organization such as the Jesuits if I were ordered to do so, as a hypothetical quote-unquote, hypothetical way to gauge my loyalty to the Legion. I presume this line of questioning was at a superior's prompting, even though I called it random, since as a legionary I was treated to such abrupt questions, often by fellow legionaries, some of whom I didn't even know. They just came up to me and asked strange questions. Very common, sort of the big brother thing, right? Just like how they all go out in pairs, all right? You know, patterns emerge, don't they? All right. So the further I progressed in the Legion of Christ, had to put that in quotes, the more objectionable things did I behold, and the more bully-like my classmates seemed to become. Clearly, the Legion cultivates bullying and elitism, structuring its organization as well as its political ideologies after, in fact, and I use the term advisedly, the Nazi Party. This too is the experience shared by nearly every ex-member with whom I have conversed, so that there is little doubt in anyone's mind that the legionary way amounts to a road not toward sanctity, but to perdition. C. The Legion's recruiters and formators strategically lie and flatter recruits and recruits' parents, with the recruiters playing good cop so the formators can later play bad cop. Caring or responsible parents, therefore, should be prompted, as a bare minimum, to meet with the formators and grill them about all of the points in this outline and more. Roman numeral I. In the event that I were to leave, I was promised the following, which from the day of my 2003 dismissal until the present moment I have been denied. Small a. From 1990, footnote. Instead, they actually offered this line about being part of a one big family with these inveterate crooks. So crystal clear mafia vibe there. Anyway, Roman numeral, small a. From 1999 at the latest, former Cheshire Dean of Students Father Antonio Rodriguez, LC, promised me and all novices transferable credits. B, small b. In November of 2003, Sao Paulo Rector Father Victor de Luna, LC, personally promised me a BA in philosophy, Bachelor of Arts degree, not just credits. Even credits I didn't get from Brazil, so pretty bad. Well, the credits I did get were not accredited, so not really credits. Small c. Cheshire superiors from at least 1999 promised me and all novices ongoing counseling for re-entering society and the workplace. A little footnote here. Having been found to be on the autistic spectrum, this would have been, and still would be, inexpressibly handy for me personally to get this counseling that I was promised 15 years ago. Okay. Right. Roman numeral II. Legionary doublespeak. Now here's a little vocabulary list. Small a. Charity. The nature of the private vow. The untheological and fully institutionalized misuse, or rather abuse, of the term charity to mean essentially no questioning, much less expressing substantial critiques of the chain of command, except to a bishop, I believe they once added. Requests for clarification are allowed only rarely. And though the vow seems to have been dissolved through direct and heavy Vatican intervention, the spirit of the vow lives on, is alive and well, in the terminological abuse, continuing its violent assault on this most important of Christian virtues. As a little footnote, an email dated as late as the 28th of May of 2016 this year, which I can produce upon request, confirms both this and the fact that the Legion has made zero progress in accreditation since at least 1999. 15 years again. No, make that 17, 18. I don't know. My math skills are not great, sorry. 17. That's right. I can remember my parents asking Father Christopher Brackett, LC, what the private vow entailed, to which he only commented that it had to do with charity. Again, really? Only now is it coming to light what the legionary means by charity. The legionary is hmm, legionary is persevering. I stumped myself, sorry. Bear with me, please. Only now is it coming to light that what the legionary means by charity, the legionary is preserving legionary secrecy and opacity. Or to put it crudely, no snitching. Small b. Unity. Strict uncommunication, coupled with paranoia built into legionary formation. Think conformation rather than information. Little joke, sorry. With any outsiders who were not targets of legionary cultivation efforts. Or as I believe it's in Spanish, captación, right? Recruitment. If you're not there to expand the legion, there's nothing to talk about. A lot like Mormons. And I didn't mention Mormons in the letter, but my goodness, they really were open about being imitators of Mormon missionaries and probably other aspects of the Mormon church as well, if you really think about it and look into it. All right. Small c, spirituality. Now this is the long one. Spirituality means methodology conditioning, that is to say, externalistic formation. There is no individual in the Legion, so there is no point in any conventional sense of spirituality, any more than there is any point to charity in the time-honored Christian sense of the word. You are never on your own in the Legion. Big Brother is always watching. You never get the chance to be mature, to mature and to become mature. Sorry. This is, tough for me. Thank you for bearing with me again. Personal conviction is occasionally mentioned as a lofty ideal, but the framework in which it could be developed or tested is never provided. Even your morning meditation is guided, then monitored through regular spiritual direction. This is not dissimilar from the new man of other socialist ideologies of our time. And in fact, they use the term new man quite often. They operate on a belief that conformity with their institution is the best thing for those called, and remember that even the calling or uncalling of necessity involves legionary institutional judgment at every step and on every level, full stop. And that their institution is the best thing in the world, the church's last best hope, etc., etc., etc. Roman numeral III. All of this bodes even worse in practical terms for your Latin American recruits. And this helps explain why, for example, despite Maciel's horrifying lifestyle, members did not speak out for decades, recalling that his first apostolic school apostolics were Mexican. And they knew that exposing a pedophile priest, especially in those days, he was also happens to be the nephew of a handful of bishops, would brand them and not him, and it would leave them with nothing to show for their years of hard work and study. And we're almost to the end of section 2. D. Legionary novice directors and their assistants and auxiliaries take all the prerogatives of a military boot camp drill sergeant, at least the psychological side of it, in terms of dehumanizing the novice, while lying to their faces. They yammer on endlessly about the virtues of humility and obedience, esteeming the latter as the most important of all virtues, and insisting that anything a superior may say is God's will for you. provided it not be in breach of one of the 10 Commandments, essentially. They seem to have no higher goal in life, no higher goal than to stifle personal responsibility and reasoning and conviction and conscience, to break you and leave you with the self-loathing that cripples a person and makes them useful for their nightmarish goals that arguably only an unrepentant psychopath could have ever conceived of to begin with. If you think I'm questioning the Vatican's judgment here, you're darn skippy. See section 6 for more details on that. Pope John Paul II routinely appointed, in fact, known promiscuous to include practicing homosexual bishops, even though he was warned by his own advisors about their not-so-secret personal conduct. Because having seen how communists calumniate people, there's that word, calumny. I should have had a calumny advisory at the beginning, right? The late Pope assumed that that was what was happening, that they were calumniating the bishops because they didn't like them. So that's how the legionary virtue of, here we go, benedicencia is working out for us. Had to throw that in. Bit of a footnote. Legionary formators love to misapply the old adage, believe half of what you see and none of what you hear, which is ironic. Or rather, it is just another course in this festival of hypocrisy, since we daily chanted visus tactus gustus in te fallitur, sed audito solo tuto creditur. What? So, for you non-Latinists, it means the opposite. It means that sight fails in Christ, I guess, and only in the hearing can everything be believed. Every day we chanted that. Okay, moving on. Section 3. The Legion still poisons both church and faith. A. Even while it behaves in all the above ways, all the aforementioned ways, the Legion lets on that it alone will save the Catholic Church from itself, insisting that its ambiguous charism, charism is really just about the rich and powerful, mostly about mooching off leaders, and that's code for the rich and powerful, insisting that its ambiguous charism and its questionable formation program are somehow the most Christocentric. But in reality, it's all mostly just infantilizing and anachronistic. Aside from being highly institutional, which Jesus' behavior was as far from as you could probably get. And the Legion's goal, never stated but forever implied, would seem to be the endless expansion, well, they always talk about expansion of their congregation, to the exclusion of all other expressions of Catholicism. Basically, we must increase, they must decrease. A zero-sum game, which in turn is the true north of their members' ethic, if ethic it can be termed. So the Legion doesn't care about the Church. The Legion cares for the Legion. The Legion has no real plan to save the Church or souls, much less. Its endgame is to eclipse the Church entirely, though I should add that I've never known any superiors to openly indulge the hidden Fatima secret conspiracy theories, though if they succeeded, it would certainly vindicate their more dire hypothetical predictions. The Legion's goal is to become the Church, and to this end they ape the magisterium's authority, and they very nearly pretend to Opus Dei's personal prelature status, their ambition to which they often discuss openly, fairly drooling in anticipation of the Vatican granting them the same status through their strategic wining and dining of up-and-coming Vatican insiders. Of course, Maciel left that amazing legacy. And they do everything possible from the first contact impression to vest in themselves the Church's legitimacy. And it is to this goal, they always have pictures of them with the Pope, always, And it is to this goal that it adopts its trademark fanciful dichotomy and its zero-sum paradigm. You know, they're the real church. That's the bottom line. B. The irony is that the Legion is everything it sounds alarm over. It systemically produces lifelong enemies of Catholicism by doing nothing more than being themselves. The totalizing, insatiable nature of their goals becomes most clear when the Legion automatically and unabashedly slurs bishops with which it has differences as ipso facto communists and Masons. A little footnote: distributism is never discussed, and their despisal of the family, like their despisal of all rival authority, is unmistakable. Um, and so they slur bishops to send this unequivocal message that all enemies of the Legion must also indubitably be secretly enemies of the church, whether they themselves know it or not, or else maybe they're simply carnal or lax. Again, passive microaggressive sign of their grand ambition and their envy of the Jesuits, Opus Dei, and the power of the Vatican family itself. This is the main reason why the Legion so cold-bloodedly resists any suggestion that they evaluate their own ways, which as a cult and a con would end them. Second. All right, moving on. A little water here. Okay. C. In sum, the Legion, in its quite blatant sociopathic ambition, exists with the intention of getting its hands on the Church's helm, to remake the Church in its own mostly horrifying image and likeness. And to justify this, they impress upon members that they must proceed according to methodology, and can do no other, despite their being fraudulent to the core, and even boasting of how they hoodwinked prelates from the beginning in order to gain their initial approval. But deliberate deceit is okay, and sometimes it's necessary, as long as it's dedicated to the Sacred Heart or the Immaculate Heart, would be the message. Again, no ethics whatsoever, no ethical framework. It's gonna create serious enemies of the Catholic Church, if it's allowed. The Legionaries preserve this fanciful dichotomy and zero-sum mindset. Now, footnote, this is what you might expect from a community organized by a certified megalomaniac. They keep this mindset intact by maintaining strict uncommunication with any outsiders who are not targets of their manipulative efforts, as I said before, most conspicuously with their non-legionary classmates. Do not talk to your non-legionary classmates. Do not talk to anyone except in conversation time. Okay. Though laughable to anyone who is in any sense cultured or seasoned, I can assure you from my experience and from the testimony of all ex-members who have been willing to engage the topic thoroughly, that what I have said here goes to the heart of the deeply held belief in every legionary community. Indeed, it is that which binds the Legion together in unity. Another key anti-virtue in the Legion that they celebrate, which we are in fact told that its official red and white colors supposedly symbolize, against all outsiders, whom they refer to as the world. A little footnote back a little bit earlier here. Just please realize that some ex-members are just too permanently emotionally crippled to reevaluate this critically, and some probably never will be. Continuing, everything here is based on expert witness testimony, if not documentation. This was not wrought of idle gossip. This letter is not about gossip or calumny, right? Maledicencia. Not what's happening here. Which, by the way, gossip being another specialty of the legions, especially in Brazil, I found, Uh, one of their first of many lines of defense against being exposed for what they are, as anyone who has discussed them openly will tell you. Right here. Nothing here is partisan in this letter, and everything can be confirmed by anyone who has at least passed the novitiate and can nonetheless still exhibit some balanced perspective on the Legion. That is to say, they can't be on their payroll, for example. Don't talk to those trolls, please. Don't feed the trolls. Clearly, it is rare to have such a constitution. I myself, again, am borderline autistic. Maybe that came into play here. Don't know. So, D. The Legion, contrary to its beautiful impassioned rhetoric that almost has you thinking they are pure-heartedly laboring in the vineyard to save the church from its enemies and cleaning up its public image, keeps its underlings busy cultivating enemies of the Catholic Church, not only through the aforementioned alienation, which obviously includes not only Legion recruits, but every degree of Regnum Christi membership and contacts beyond. They also plant the seeds for future enemies of the Church by their own example of, while posing as super Catholics, completely disregarding the little people whom it uses, abuses, and lies to every step of the way. That is why, whatever one's apprehensions of the trends of Catholic culture, catechesis, vocations, etc., parishioner retention, the Legion is not the answer by any stretch of the imagination. Any decision to align with the Legion, or even to let them get their foot in the door, immediately compromises community integrity and critically injures the body of Christ, for both now and the future. There is no scandal, crisis, or shortage quite so serious that continued dishonesty and opacity, the Legion's two hallmarks, can't make it even worse. Rather, the problems of complexity call for answers of simplicity. E. The notion, upon which the Legion's superiors insist, that the Legion's charism and formation is peerlessly Christocentric or Christ-like, is the icing on the cake here, really. Because on top of their studied Pharisaism, we keep running into, they are con artists who borrow the bulk of their pious platitudes from Spanish mystics of the Counter-Reformation period, such as St. Ignatius of Loyola and St. Teresa of Avila. And for their most sacred writings, they plagiarized a contemporary Spaniard named Luis Lucia, who wrote his Salterio de mis Horas while a political prisoner of fascist Prime Minister Francisco Franco, for whom, as with all fascist figures, legionaries oddly can summon up nothing but praise. Little footnote, Lucia's Salterio de mis Horas has been considered Maciel's magnum opus under the title Salterio de mis Dias. We were told the latter had written it when he was being attacked by communist bishops during a period that legionary lore designates the Great Blessing, and about which we are told very little, just that some legionaries had the effrontery to cooperate with ecclesial authorities, which almost destroyed the legion. So, little Judases making problems. The legion commonly had their members write things which their revered father-founder took as his own composition. So we're getting philosophical now. In philosophical terms, there is no such thing as the Legion. What there is a hybrid of plagiarized mysticism spliced together with a one-track political ideology, and a likewise antisocial methodology, programmed strategically to prey on the innocent and use them to make the Legion appear to be all that their glowing rhetoric assures us they are. Footnote. In the case of the Familia Apostolate exemplifies this most clearly, and you could just ask the founders of Familia, they'll tell you. The Legion consistently hustles the innocent and the intelligent, then swindles their work out from under them. Then they praise fake virtues, like returning a pen. So their whole way of life balks at the gospel, as they strain the gnat and swallow the camel. They obviously have a structure in which the lower echelons are taught to live the gospel, while the higher echelons are taught to live the exact opposite, to live like a Pharisee. Um, and thus does it build its empire of lies. By the way, they aren't the only group that are this bad. You should know Wicca, maybe also kind of on that same level. I've heard, because I research a lot of things, cults, religions, other groups, that the lower levels of Wicca have the pentagram pointing upward, which is supposed to be a symbol of magic and good, but the top levels have it pointed downward, which most people who are into symbolism or symbology associate with Satanism. So, anyway, ultimately, again, the Legion exists for the Legion, or more properly speaking, does not exist at all. F. The Legion, on its good days, is an anachronism. There is no doubt in my mind that its founders and leaders know the Legion to be a relic, which is different from being authentic, since that would imply engaging society rather than just trolling and using people. The leadership uses the Legion's rigidity to fuel their insatiable greed, ambition, and lust. And vanity. They succor less than savvy reactionaries and malcontents, often the parents, as well as the shallow, flattery-hungry wealthy. So the former as recruits, the latter as benefactors. Often there's overlap too, of course. If you're the child of a rich family, your treatment in the novitiate is going to be different from my experience. I'll just let you know. G. The Legion represents the pyramid scheme of Roman Catholicism, with all the cultural toxicity that expression implies. Nor do I now believe their present downsizing trend to have somehow wounded their pompous wiles, but rather the saying that still waters run deep seems apt in this instance. Like true gold diggers that they are, they go straight for the rich in whatever diocese lets them in. They use the money to hire lawyers to make sure they can scam with impunity, and then they go lure in well-meaning Catholic kids, often from conservative parents who are perhaps isolated and looking for friends. The Legionaries are predatory and sodomitical by nature, physically and psychologically alike. Little footnote on that: they even cover themselves against exposure, like when they had the discussion forum xlcrc.org removed, thanks to their lawyers. Again, they never seem to mention their lawyers when I was in there, but boy, did I learn about them when I was out. So, H. Legionaries often refer to themselves as living the active life, contemplative and conquering, which upon reflection calls to mind their penchant for action films, or maybe their delusional ideology of endless expansion, again, just so unbelievably Nazi-esque. I. The experts in pedophile psychology all agree that, contrary to past misinformation, which I am told led to the worst of the predator-priest scandal, that is to say, the bishops moving the priests around from one place to another, one cannot reasonably expect to rehabilitate the pathological pedophilia addict, especially one who has gotten away with it for decades and has, like a crackhead, if you will, developed a skill and a remorselessness for preying on the weakness of sheeple. I would argue that What is true of a pathological pedophile also extends to a pathological con artist, or scam artist, or fraud artist, uh, whom I will equate to basically the psychological equivalent of a pedophile, a psychic pedophile, if you will, uh, but not in the modern sense of psychic. Adjectival, I mean. J. Legionaries despise and use other religious congregations. Some time back, Reverend Frank Phillips of the St. John Cantius Society in Chicago let a legionary road team uh, duo stay in his seminary for about a weekend, I think, and they thanked him with a phone bill of $800, which he found out after they'd left, of course. A seminarian there, actually, from Midwestern Canada, so just north of Chicago, told me that a legionary road team had driven hundreds of miles in their immaculate suits to essentially hand him a brochure, rather obviously recalling to mind one of Jesus' more elaborate indictment of his contemporary Pharisees and their own recruitment tactics. K. In short, the Legion, by its nature, is more of a liability than an asset for the Diocese of X. One moment. Okay, Section 4. The Legion is reflective of some of the Vatican's own internal issues. Moment of truth here, people, so put on your big boy pants for this one. The Vatican is knee-deep in nearby groups like the Legion, which have cropped up outside Rome, and to some degree in many major dioceses globally, with grotesquely infantilizing formation programs, chock full of classic mind control stunts, and a culture of espionage and paranoia. The Legion's allegedly long-hidden corruption echoes a theme we have seen repeated in the Oblates of the Virgin Mary, Miles Jesu, the Community of Beatitudes, the Community of St. John, etc. Like the Legion, they all seem to appeal to an uncritical popular nostalgia that most often exalts unsavory characters. This is the classic narcissist-dependent dynamic I spoke of. The Vatican also exhibits a criminal mindset when confronted, for example, not just with tough issues like the Legion, see Vows of Silence, and the papal, but also the papal bull Inter Cetera, which of course had a lot to do with Columbus's genocide. Clearly, we are today seeing ultra-clericalism run amok, both within the Legion and to some extent outside it, even. That wasn't too bad, was it? Section 5. Our motives must be pure and our goals restorative. A. Due to all the information above, I don't think it's an exaggeration to imagine that we have a duty as human beings to at least warn the youth's parents. And you might be well advised to notify your brother bishops in X and elsewhere, where Reverend XXLC is presently planning his XX summer camp. Footnote, nothing I have heard indicates that that things are any better among the women of Regnum Christi, nor especially the consecrated women's compound. The Legion's present enjoyment of some bishops' favor, while understandable in some ways, can give the impression of a clericalist disconnect from the real lives of everyday Catholics. But the Legion does not distinguish bishop, priest, deacon, or layman, rich, poor, or middle class. The Legion will snow you, take you for all you're worth, and if you ever get too big for your britches, they'll sick Jim Fair, Maciel Padilla, and their team of lawyers, black propaganda wordsmiths, and handsomely paid shills on you until you have nothing left, not even a reputation or self-respect. The Legion wants to be the Church's shining light, mostly through keeping us in the dark. Now that it is wounded, it is our duty to act quickly and strike back against these Pharisees with the, as relevant as ever, gospel truth. B. Our motives are ethical, not political, so inevitably we find ourselves at cross purposes with the Legion's goals right out of the gate. Once the glow of legionary propaganda faded, this was the hard truth I had to come to grips with. This is a clear case of real faith and morals versus lip service and rhetoric. Uh, utilitarianly applied. As I mentioned, the higher you get in the ranks of the Legion and the Regnum Christi movement, the more elitist, bullying, hypocritical, and just plain morally repugnant it becomes. Footnote. My father, whom you may recall, will tell you this, because that culture of elitism is exactly what turned him off to Regnum Christi, even after founding Ex Apostolate. C. I have seen real brilliance from the Diocese of X. My hope is that it will take up its role in this matter, as it has with others, as a light to the Church. And if nothing else comes of this, I do see it as inescapably incumbent upon us to make every effort to reach out and inform the youth's parents post-haste before things go any further. Transparency is key here. What I'm trying to say is, look, you're not going to gain authority by allowing the legionaries to run roughshod over your sheep. The way to gain authority is by guarding the sheep against the wolves. So there's a little explanation of what I mean when I say that transparency is key. Please do not make allowing the Legion to operate in an area where you typo here. Fatal typo. Please do not make allowing the Legion to operate in the area, an area where you unhesitatingly follow suit with Rome. I give that one a B. Sorry. Let me try that one again. Please do not make allowing the Legion to operate an area where you unhesitatingly follow suit with Rome. Take up your role as the light of the Church, and let's get out of this dark age. Okay. Your servant in Christ, yada yada, nunc dimittis. There's another footnote, and it has nothing to do with the Legion. Well, that's the letter. I hope you enjoyed it. I do intend on, because who wants to see this face? I'm going to be making a PowerPoint, well, the free version of PowerPoint presentation, and hopefully it'll look nicer than this for you, and make it easier also to follow along. And do your own research, check up on everything I've said. Talk to ex-legionaries if this is giving you trouble. Please investigate, research, analyze. Thank you so much, and may God bless you all.